wish you a good morning. You're listening to Power Talks with Beth Ann and Melody Cedarstrom in the morning, where talk is real, truth is in the talk, and there's power in truth, and we believe that power talks. Welcome to Power Talks. Good morning, Melody. How are you today?
Good morning. Good morning to the listeners, and welcome back, everyone. We had a day off yesterday.
We have to keep reminding ourselves, today is Tuesday. Today is Tuesday. Today is Tuesday.
Now, what's the fun in that, Beth? What's the fun in that?
I know. Well, you know, they call it Super Monday, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
Well,
anyway.
The only thing that I know that is super now is the super hurricane that is barreling down on Florida. It shows as the prediction. Hurricane Irma is taking aim, Cat 5, super
oh my goodness
winds, I guess, already. It became an extremely dangerous Category 5 hurricane, and
that must have happened overnight, because when I was watching last night, of course I know a lot of that was reruns. When I was watching last night, they were still had her at a Category 4, so she's been upgraded to 5, huh?
This was as of 8 a.m.
this morning? Goodness.
Yes. And so right now that the hurricane is in effect for, all the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, and it shows like it's heading into, no warnings for Florida yet, but it shows that that's where it is heading, and I don't think they know where it's going to go after that. But the prediction is, and there's been a lot of discussions, or I've heard comments of a Hurricane 6, and, and it's just like, really? I guess anything worse than a Category 5 would be a 6, but, there's also fake news in weather reporting. So, folks, be careful out there.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if I'm correct, but to me, where you would have the least amount of fake news is the Weather Channel. I don't think they need to create fake news.
And plenty of that out there.
And there's plenty of that out there. And I understand, I believe there's ways to manipulate the weather, and they've been manipulating the weather for decades. So I get all that, but anyway,
you're like me. You tread lightly in that issue, in that statement, in those theories. It's not that we don't believe that they're out there, but I think part of us just doesn't want to believe that that's really being done. But anyway, we do have to be careful. I would recommend that they get their, what do they call them, their backpacks ready. If you don't have them ready with your emergency medications that you have to have, get it in that backpack. If you have to take refuge and evacuate, do whatever you have to do, put in that backpack the main essentials that you're going to need to survive for the next few days in case you do, or several days in case you do have to evacuate. And we have seen so much of that, and I'm kind of a lazy person, Melody. I don't have that done either. And I am going to get that done in the next week or two. I'm going to get a backpack, and I'm going to get it packed, and I'm going to have it ready for us if we should have to evacuate. We're right in the middle of the nation. You wouldn't think that would happen, but you just never know what's going to happen. So I am a believer in that, and I think watching Houston has made it even more real. Maybe it's my age. I didn't used to be afraid of falling, and now I am. So maybe it's my age. You realize that these things do happen, and you need to be prepared just in case.
I did a little bit of preparing this weekend because at that point
the blood of Jesus has power.
Where this hurricane was going to go. We didn't know it was going to go up the East Coast, so I did a little mental preparing and actually, got some things together, and even sometimes mental preparing. If you're, because it wouldn't have hit here till next Tuesday. So we have up to the weekend, and this coming weekend, to actually prepare. If it was actually going to come up the East Coast, it still could. I don't know yet. So I've done some mental preparing, and I've done some other preparing too.
And we have to do that in our lives. We have to do that in everything. I mean, they have often said you should have an escape route in case of a fire, or in case of something happening. You need to have a plan. And, of course, I went through that, and we didn't have a plan then. Of course, none of us were home when that happened. But that was a God thing, I do believe. But you do have to have a plan, and afterwards we did. We told the children where to get out and where to meet. Everybody has to meet in a certain area, otherwise you don't know that they're out. So you have to meet in a certain area, and so we did that when we had kids in the house, and we haven't made such a plan with just the two of us. I guess we'll get out and jump together because we're in the same area of the house. So, but these are things that we don't want to think about, that we do need to think about. And I think the tragedy of Hurricane Harvey has made it very, very real to us. And the bag, what do they call those? They have a name for them. The backpacks or the packs, whatever. They don't necessarily have to be a backpack. It's just easier to carry.
The bug outs?
Bug outs, I think that's what it's called, bug out. And they recommend certain things. And in fact, I had a list and I've lost it. I did have a list on everything you need to put in there. But I heard them talking about people in Houston that are diabetic and this kind of thing, that they have heart issues, older people, not necessarily older. There's younger people with heart problems and medication that they have to have on a daily basis. And you need to pack, I'd say make sure you have like at least a week's worth of your medications and put them in the bug out bag. Now, maybe they recommend more than that, but they were talking about different things you need to put in there, and I need to dig that out. I copied that, printed it off last week, and now I don't know where I put it. That's kind of how I am with my bug out bag. I'd probably lose it too. But there needs to be a place where it is, and everyone needs to know about it. The bug out bag, and of course if you have family, may end up with one for each person in the family. Somebody asked, you have to get your bug out bag, and you can't be searching for it at the last minute. It has to be ready to go.
And one item that a lot of folks fail to recognize are your pets.
Yeah.
Don't forget the pet food. Don't forget their pills. Don't forget their medications if they're on. And make sure you plan for
a leash,
the little
perhaps.
one. A leash. And make sure they have their food, their water. Make sure you have enough water for the dog too. And so, can't forget our little friends.
They're part of the family as well. And so, absolutely, you've got to take care of everybody. And so anyway, that's just kind of our thing. And I'll have to get that list on that bug out bag. Somebody sent that to me last week. A listener out of Florida that sent that to me, and now they're looking at it as well. So anyway, and probably, do you think maybe you should make sure you take some coins with you, something in case you do need to make some purchases somewhere down the line? What do you think?
Well, you certainly do have to secure. I mean, a lot of people buy gold and silver to preserve their wealth, and so you do have to make sure that is in a safe place also. And and also, yes, put in a few silver coins. Pack up some of that 90% silver. That's a perfect thing for you to take along, small little pieces of gold. And I'm not a fan. I know they've been promoting a lot of these little bars and grams, and I'm not a fan of that because it's not highly recognizable. It's not a coin, and coins will always be more recognizable than a bar. You don't know what that bar is, and it comes from, who knows where. And not only that, and it's not as recognizable. Not only that, you pay a lot more for your gold also. So buy 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagles. They're light, they're small, they're easy to take with you, along with some 90% silver. You don't need a whole lot, just a little, just in case. And so, I mean, you really only want to put in your bug out packs your essentials, and I would include that.
Absolutely, you can't take everything.
No.
Kitchen sink cannot go in there. You have to use some common sense. Does that mean I can't take my makeup?
Ask your husband.
Yeah. He says, you're packing that, you're carrying it.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, we need to get back on here. We will be watching Irma, and we are praying very hard for those in Florida and around, still in Houston. We had the day of prayer yesterday, and remembering those who have been hit very hard, and there was no celebration of Labor Day for those, and they have a long haul back. And we need to keep remembering them in our prayers and in our thoughts. And everywhere you go right now, if you make a purchase anywhere, they're asking you if you want to leave a donation for the Hurricane Harvey victims. And so be careful with where you leave those donations. I do encourage people to give if they can, or to volunteer if they can. And, it's a great need right now. And let's just keep this nation in prayer, not just for these, but for this nation, because this nation is really in a turmoil right now.
I think so, and I think we're on the brink of so many. We could sit here for 8 hours and talk about all the things that we're so close to impacting each and every one of us financially and in many different ways. And so it's Monday, Beth.
It is Monday. It's Tuesday. It's Super Tuesday.
Super Tuesday. There you go. See there,
it's
folks.
Super Tuesday. I used to dread it so bad when I was in the medical field, and Mondays were horrible after the weekends, and you dreaded it on Sunday nights. You knew it was coming, but when it was after a holiday, it was even worse on Super Tuesdays. Everything was escalated, and everyone who had a need over the weekend was going to be calling and needing into. So, yeah, it's Super Tuesday, so we're just going to have to focus on that. Focus, Melody, focus.
Try it.
We have a couple of minutes before we go into our first break.
That means we need callers today.
Let's
callers today.
Let's give that number. 717. They think we're losing it. 717-300-1218. 717-300-1218. Lots of things happened this weekend. We do want to talk about North Korea later in the show. We want to talk about some other things. I have a little something from Bill Federer I want to share later in the show. I'm just going to hit the highlights in it. I'm not going to go into depth. Bill is an awesome writer, an awesome historian, and I have studied this a little bit, like I said, a little bit in my life, but I really need to get down to the nitty-gritty, because that's why history is so important. History of where we have been, where other nations have been, what they have gone through. That's how come we ended up with a Constitution. That's somebody we need to get on the air. We need to get Chris Ann Hall on the air with us if she's available. She's so busy doing her own show and going around and speaking and teaching and all that, but we do need to get her on. And we are going to get some guests lined up. Melody has hit me with that task, and I'm going to get on it this week, and we're going to get some guests. And one we're going to get is, and I'm sure he'll be on this week, Melody, because he's always very willing, and that's Mike Cutler. He's a retired INS. I call him super agent. He was a senior special agent for the INS for years and retired there. He actually spoke before the 9/11 Commission. And he has a lot to say about DECA, and so we will have a show on that, and I'll let you know when we get him scheduled. But he may be as quick as tomorrow. He's usually right on it whenever I ask him to come on the air. So we'll see what we can do about that and get some other guests lined up. But our history came, our Constitution came through history of what other contracts and documents of government. And Chris Ann Hall is really good at breaking that down. She just talks so fast. I can't write that fast, and I can't keep it in my head that fast. But we do need to get her on later on and see how we can help teach ourselves a little bit more, as well as our listeners. We're going into a break. Your calls are welcome on Power Talks. 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. Our challenge to you is to stay in prayer. We had a National Day of Prayer yesterday, but we cannot just make it one day. And Melody and Beth Ann will be right back.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Changed some lines here. Apparently I was garbled, so they now have me on a phone line. I want to give the phone number out as 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. Melody, you had some information from Hawaii and a little bit on the Bitcoin. Do you want to talk about that right now?
We can. If you wanted to hold off on Bill Federer, I don't want to, because I think he's important, and even though I believe these are important.
What he has done with this article, and this is from WorldNet Daily, which is WND.com, WND.com, and I have had, and Bill would probably come on the air with us too, very willing to talk about this. I would like to do a complete show just on this because I think it's important. They're tearing down monuments and making threats here and there as to our past and our history. But I think it's important to remember the mistakes you make as well as the good things you do. And he talks about the gladiators in Rome, and the fall of Rome was culmination of external and internal factors. The Great Wall in China, he says, back in 220 A.D., the later Eastern Han Dynasty had extended sections of the Great Wall of China along its Mongolian border. This resulted in the northern Huns attacking west instead of east. This caused the domino effect of tribes migrating west across the Central Asia and overrunning the Western Roman Empire. He goes on now. I'm just going to kind of read the highlight what he says here. Open borders. Illegal immigrants poured across Roman borders. And just think about that. He goes on to say, loss of common language. Now, he says more about these in each one of these. There's more than just the one-liner or paragraph, but I'm just going to hit the highlights. Loss of a common language. He said, at first, the immigrants assimilated and learned the Latin language. They worked as servants, with many rising to leadership, but then they came so fast they did not learn Latin, but instead created a mix of Latin with their own Germanic, Frankish, and he goes on, Anglo-tribal tongues, and they changed the language. They were no longer assimilating. A welfare state. The bread and the circus, he says. Starting in 123 B.C., the immensely powerful Roman politician Gaius Gracchus began appeasing citizens with welfare, a monthly handout of free dole handout. Goes on down talking about violent entertainment. The Circus Maximus and Colosseum were packed with crowds of Romans engrossed with violent entertainment, games, chariot races, until 404 A.D., gladiators fighting to the death. Church lost its role as conscience. Planned Parenthood. Roman families had fewer children. Some would sell unwanted children into slavery, or up until 374 A.D., leave them outside, exposed to the weather, to die. Immorality and infidelity. There was court favoritism to the patronage system, injustice in the legal system, infidelity, bathhouses rampant with homosexuality, sexual immorality, gluttony, and gymnasiums. And he says gym being the Greek word, I didn't know this, for naked. Class warfare. City centers were abandoned by the upper class, who bought up farms from rural landowners and transformed them into estates. Taxes. Welfare and government jobs exploded, especially with emperors wanting to honor themselves by leaving legacies of massive public building projects such as bathhouses, coliseums, parade grounds, and etc. Outsourcing. Rome's economy stagnated from a large trade deficit as grain production was outsourced to North Africa. And he goes on to explain some of the other things in that. Exploding debt, are you ready? And coinage debasement. Rome was crippled by huge government bureaucracies and enormous public debt. Rather than curb out-of-control government spending, Roman emperors decided to debase coins by mixing them with cheaper base metals. What do you think about that, Melody? I did send this article to you.
All sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. Self-promoting corrupt politicians. The Roman emperor usurped so much power that the Roman Senate, instead of ruling Rome, only existed to carry out the emperor's agenda. And he goes on to explain more. The educated and skilled pursued businesses and financial successes to the neglect of their involvement in politics. Military cuts. Though militarily superior and marching on advanced road systems, the highly trained Roman legions were overextended and strained, fighting continual conflicts from the Rhine River to the Sassanid Persian Empire. And he goes on to explain more on that. Terrorist attacks. And he says here in 452, Pope Leo rode out to meet Attila and persuaded him not to sack Rome. This delayed the inevitable, but for only a few more decades. Lessons from the fall of Rome, and he goes on. And this was actually, what he's talking about here was actually a show from Fox Business Network's John Stossel, just kind of putting this all together of what happened in Rome. Rome was even a republic with a constitution, but he goes on to explain how their elected officials and their leaders ignored it. They totally ignored the Constitution, ignored what they were doing, and they just kept growing in bureaucracy. And of course, we know that John Stossel he leans on the libertarian side. I believe he is a libertarian, but when we watch it, when we look at the history of what happened to Rome, we can see the American United States of America falling into that same circle, that same synopsis of what's going on each time. Think about, I had somebody tell me years and years ago, before Rome fell, they were paying their athletes exorbitant amount of money for their entertainment. Look what we pay people in baseball, NFL, basketball, and on with these sports. I guess you would call football a violent sport. And we come in by hordes into these arenas, and we sit and we hoop and we holler and we yell and we scream, and we can barely afford to take families to those anymore because of the cost, not just of the ticket to get in, but if you want a drink or something, you're there for hours, you're going to have to drink something. You're not allowed to bring anything in. You have to buy what's there. So whether it's beer or water or a snow cone or a hot dog, you can't afford to take a family. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And now, and somewhere I have this buried, where did I put that? Melody, can you find that for me? I
can't find mine this morning. Now you want me to find yours?
Well, it was a story about the NFL that took a knee. They all took a knee, and how the NFL is losing. They're absolutely losing listeners and watchers because of their politicizing and going against the government and going against, well, not against the government, but against the pride in this country. I'm one of those that was always loyal to my school. We can't even get anybody to be loyal to this nation. And I watched. You know what I did over the weekend? I watched Wonder Woman. I watched it twice. I watched it twice. And when I watch these things, I look for the parallels or for what's really happening in our nation today. That was in a time during World War II I think it was World War II, when she came, maybe in the First World War, where they were coming in there, and everybody was fighting. Everybody was fighting. Of course, she didn't know what America was or the world was, because she was on her own little island, separated. And I won't tell the storyline. I think most people know what Wonder Woman was supposed to be. But anyway, talking about, there they were proud of their nation, but some of them were still fighting just for money, and then they ended up turning around. They were proud of their nation, and they wanted to fight for liberty and freedom and for love of country, love of liberty, love of freedom. And here we see these football teams taking a knee as if that is something to be honored. And that confuses me. It confuses me greatly. But the officers that were on the beat there, they were supposed to be protecting them, they didn't take it very lightly. And they were really upset. And it's a good story, and I've lost it. I can't find it here in my pile of papers. But
you would think that the NFL would come out and, it's just truly amazing, the billions of dollars that is funneled into these, sports for entertainment, and yet, they actually take political sides. It truly is amazing. And, I just wanted to talk and make a point. You were talking about the entertainment compared to Roman's days, when the first reality program, Survival, came on how many years ago. I always thought that reality program was very much like the Romans' gladiators. You decided who well, that's up to some, who lived and who died.
Down. Mm-hmm.
And so the Survival is very much the same way. They decided who stays and who goes. And I always thought eventually it will come to a point in time where people will view and decide who lives and who dies. There's a program now that it is a court. People actually have these cases and the audience decides who is, whether they're guilty or not. And it's one step at a time. And when we look at the violence and we look at, there's no other place we're going to go but there, as the Romans did. And you're right, it's history, and we're following it. We are the empire, and we are following it in so many different areas in which he has, in every area that he has actually listed in his article. So he did a great job.
When he talked about the military being depleted, the Democrats are really into that. They want to deplete the military. It isn't necessary, right now. And here we are on the brink of a war. I mean, everything that I have here this morning coming in from different sources talking about what happened over the weekend. Of course, Kim Jong-un is at it again. He's strutting his stuff, and he's like he's flaunting it, like he wants war. South Korea is asking President Trump it says Trump to scrap the warhead weight limit as North Korea tensions intensify. South Korea's defense minister to the U.S., please redeploy nukes to the peninsula. Japan is prepping for evacuations from South Korea for its people to get out of there. It all sounds like war to me, that we're on the brink of that. Will we end up in another world war? And I mentioned last night to my husband, I said, is it going to take a world war for these young Americans to realize how good they had it? They're out there screaming in the streets for this and for that, and they really don't have a clue what liberty is. They don't know the difference between a republic and a socialism and communism. They don't understand. So they're back to that welfare mentality and getting from the government. The government's supposed to take care of you, and it's just amazing to me where the people have come. All of us. None of us. I saw YouTube this morning, and it was retweeted by Dr. Gorka. He's been very active on Twitter here lately. Maybe he always was. I just started following him. Can't keep up with him. But it was an immigrant who came here legally, is now a citizen, and she was reciting the preamble to the Constitution. And I said she puts many of us to shame. We need to, at least my challenge was on Twitter for all of us to read that again this week and familiarize ourselves with who we are. Because I think that's what's happened, Melody. We've forgotten who we are. So here we are on the brinks of war. Here we are. We can see the parallels between Rome and the United States of America, and how we're just going down that same road, the same cycle. We're going to lose it, just like Rome did, if we don't turn it around, and I don't see that turning around happening. I know that we're not what the mainstream media says we are. We can see that in Texas and Louisiana. The American people are not bigots and racists. There might be a few here that are, but as a whole, we're a caring people that love one another, and we don't wish bad for one another, and they're not asking them what their political views are before they're helping rescue.
I have faith we can turn it around, but I don't believe we can. I think we're too far gone, but I will never lose my faith in prayers and doing what I can, that maybe we'll bring God back into this country and turn it around and start fighting the evil that is here with his blessing and his power. But I think we're on a path where so that is always a possibility. But
I believe in miracles, and I believe that if
until that happens, we're on this path that is going to unfold just like the Romans are. We have a system that is ready to collapse. We are too far into debt. Where's this money? We can't change things around, not by man. And I don't care how many programs They change the tax cuts. I was telling Beth prior to the program, and it does come down to the basics. I mean, it just everything that's listed in your article, taxes, class war, I mean, every one of those have to be turned around.
And the coinage, the depletion of the coinage. Yes.
And that's how they've been able to grow. That's how government has been able to grow, by that debasement. And until you stop them, that's the only place that you can start. And I don't see that happening. I was telling Beth prior to the program, I heard the mayor of Houston, and he said it several times, that President Trump had promised that they would reimburse Houston for all their debt, for the billions of dollars that will be needed to repair Houston.
Well, for 90%.
90%.
Which is nearly all of it. Where's that going to come from?
And
now, the mayor's saying that. I didn't hear the president say that. I'm not defending him. I'm not saying he's a liar or anything, but where's that money going to come from?
I don't think he would say it repeatedly if it wasn't told to him.
Well, I think you're right there.
I mean, I've watched, he seemed from that he had his things together, but again, a politician is a politician, and so maybe that was his way of putting some pressure on Washington to make sure that it is. But again, when Houston is the fourth largest city in the country and 10th in economy, it's a lot of funds will be sent there. So.
Well, there's a great need there, but I don't see how, we're already broke. We can't do it all. The American people are very generous, but they're very strapped right now. We just can't afford much of anything. And it's sad, but I see this, just like this Roman timeline. It wasn't really a timeline, but so to speak, the cycle. We're in that same cycle. Where it's the bureaucracy is getting larger, the government's getting bigger, and the people are getting broker. And, they just can't squeeze enough out of these turnips out here. And it's just bad. It really is. But I thought that was interesting history. I love Bill Federer, and I thought that was really interesting history.
Yeah, it's a nice little timeline as far as the comparison. So he did
and the title of it is Roman Empire, Ominous Parallels with Modern America. That's what he's titled it, and it is from WorldNet Daily, which is just WND.com. And they put several of his writings in there, and it's up. I have it on my show's Facebook page. I put it on there. So when we get a Facebook page, we'll put some things on that too. We're still working on it, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. But, that kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about because, here's another sign of where we are headed and how can we turn this around when technology is going to be replacing a lot of jobs. We hear of driverless trucks, factory robots, delivery drones, virtual personal assistants. And as these innovations increase, there's what is going to happen to jobs. I mean, there's many predictions, and people fear that these robots and machines are just they're destined to take over the jobs. And what are human beings going to do? How are they going to have an income? How are they going to survive? Well, we all know from a very long time, one of the biggest ideas that the elite seem to have is, population elimination. Eliminate the population and a lot of your problems go away. Don't know if that is part of this, when you have robots taking over jobs, eliminate a lot of people. You don't need humans for jobs. But that wasn't why I was getting into this about the innovations, the technology. It's about universal basic income. And that's the notion that everyone should be able to receive a stream of income to live on regardless of their employment or economic status. And this idea seems to be gaining traction nationally and globally. Finland is experimenting on 2,000 of their citizens. You have Hawaii, San Francisco Bay Area. There's some of the political liberal corners are distributing ideas of this guaranteed income. They're having discussions all over the world, Britain, the United States. And this actually was talked about back in the 60s and 70s, so this isn't a new idea, but it just wasn't very accepted. And, it was put underground until you get to a point in time where, people will embrace this type of a system. Problem is, where are they going to get the money? But they have answers for that also. And some of these technology companies, there's a trial program in Kenya that is led by a U.S. group, Give Directly. It is funded mainly by Google. This network there's another network that was started by eBay founder, and Good Ventures is co-led by Facebook co-founder. These are the guys that, are promoting, and they have the money. The Economic Security Project is co-led by another Facebook co-founder. They committed $10 million over 2 years to basic income projects. So when I see these guys in the White House, it disturbs me, because this is the direction that they, that we're heading in as a country. It's not good.
It's not good. We're headed down. And, the corruption that we have, we probably won't have a chance to get into that today, but that goes back to that Roman Empire as well, the fall of it, because those in leadership ignored their constitution. They created the bureaucracy. They let it grow and grow and grow, and they laid back and got rich. And we see the D.C. occupiers doing the same thing, and they keep taking us in and out of wars, well, more in than out. And here we are on the brink of a war again because of bad choices for the last 20-some years. We're going into a break. 717-300-1218, and we will be right back.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. And with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldAndSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. we're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Believe in truth, and we're trying to bring you the truth. And we've had a lot of conversation this morning, and I think we have a caller, but Melody wanted to finish up what she was talking about before we went into that break.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a final statement about this universal basic income and all these test programs that they're setting and they're trying and where the money is going to come from. What I believe is they're setting the stage. They're not going to introduce a universal income before the system collapses, or before World War III, or before your retirement accounts, your 401s, your pensions, until they've been stolen from. And people will welcome, and that's what they do. They do it the best, is they create the situations. They will government is here to help. Here is this basic income that will give you. You don't have to worry anymore. Just like the people in Alaska, they're distributed money from the revenue of oil, and their payments range anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 annually. And it helps the Alaskans save money. Of course, if you have a universal basic income, they're going to have to pay you more than $1,000 to $2,000. But this is all set up. And what we see today with our politics, with all those things that Mr. Federer announced, it's all setting the stage. And all that will collapse, and then they'll rush in with a new monetary system. They'll rush in with a universal basic income. Even the LIBOR rates out of England, they're going to introduce new rates in a couple of years. So I think we're very close to all these things coming to fruition. And folks, you do need to, just like you need to have that bug out pack, you also need to start protecting your wealth. And we have Joe from Arkansas calling us this morning. Good morning, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Good morning. Yeah,
what's on your mind?
I wanted to comment on this universal basic income idea, and I think it's a very bad idea.
It is
immoral. It's immoral for two main reasons, I'd say. Number one, they have to take the income from somebody that's earned it to give to somebody that hasn't, so that makes it immoral on that count. And number two, it's immoral because it encourages people to be lazy. If you get the money you need to buy your necessities and, maybe a few comforts and luxuries of life without having to work to earn it, that tends to make people lazy and frivolous-minded, and not to develop their own potential to do what they could do to do something worthwhile in the world. And they'll probably be entertaining themselves more than working to accomplish anything worthwhile. So it's immoral that way because it stunts good human development. And so for those two reasons, I think it's a very bad idea. But apparently it is going to be a really big problem that robots are going to take all the jobs, and we need some kind of solution to this problem. So I think it's time to do some creative thinking about what would be a way to solve this problem in a moral way rather than an immoral way. And the best thing I've been able to think of, the idea that's really come to my mind really strongly, is the idea that instead of a universal basic income, everybody should be given their basic economic security by being given, say, about a half acre of land, because this would be moral on two reasons. Number one, land is not the fruit of somebody else's work. Land was put here by the Creator for all of us, and so it's morally right that everybody should be able to have access to a minimal amount of it. I'm not saying give everybody 40 acres or anything like that, but enough to build themselves a house and make themselves a garden and work in their garden and support themselves, to get their basic economic security. And doing it this way would also force and push and encourage people to work, because, when you have just the land, that doesn't give you what you need, but then you have to get to work and you have to build yourself a house and you have to tend animals that you keep on the land and you have to work in the garden to grow your food and so on like that. So that would push people to do something worthwhile and to work, rather than encourage them to be lazy and just entertain themselves as the universal basic income would. And so that's what I think is a much better solution to this, is establish a universal right to a basic minimum amount of land, and then you could buy more land if you want. I'm all for people owning 100 acres or 10 acres or whatever they want to buy if they've got the money to buy it. But if we would establish the idea that everybody has a basic, moral right to a minimal amount of land, where they can work and scratch out a living, then that would give everyone their basic economic security, in a perfectly moral way that would encourage them to work and be productive rather than, this horrible universal basic income idea.
I agree with you. It is immoral, and I wasn't supporting the idea, but this is the direction that it seems governments globally are headed to as a solution to these problems. And, I think it would be wonderful if people could work the land. It is a great idea. They used to do that. And I think I shared this story with you once before, where I know in Arizona people could have tracts of land if they mined the land. It could be anywhere from mining gold, panning gold if you had water going through it or whatever. That would, you could put up borders. This was your land. You could live there as long as you did some sort of mining on it and so forth. We did have a homestead policy up until I think the 90s. Where they changed it and eliminated it. It was a very small type of homestead type program, but, that was eventually eliminated and everything. So, I think it's a good thing. People should be able to go wherever they, choose and make arrangements and so forth and work the land to live. But I think we live in a world that we would have to change it around first before we got to that point. You're going to see India, they're considering distributing a universal basic income, but they're also looking to ban driverless cars because that would hurt people's jobs. So you're going to have governments that's either going to say, no, you can't do this with computers. You can't have this technology replace computers' jobs. And I think that might be the battle that you might see with these technology companies and governments from around the world. They're trying to, make billions and billions more and create more technology, and governments are going to have to say no. So I don't know what the answers are, but we're heading in a direction.
Having the land is what is true wealth. And
Absolutely.
That's one reason they don't want us to have the land. That's why there's so much land grabbing going on. And I think it's the moral thing to do. I think Joe's absolutely correct on that. A half an acre of land, somebody might think, well, that's not very much, but that's quite a bit of property. You can build a house on that, and you can have a pretty nice garden out there. And 1 acre of land is 43,560 square foot, so it'd be over 20,000 square foot of property. That's a lot to mow if you were pushing it. And so it would be quite a bit of property in order to put out a garden and maybe have some chickens, as the boss used to say, or some other kind of livestock on there to help take care of your family's needs.
But when you have half of the population that's being taken care of, do you think they're really going to go out and fend for themselves? Half those people, how many times do we see cruelty to animals, to dogs? Do you think they're really going to be able to have a cow and a pig and a goat and take care of them properly?
I don't think a lot of Americans know how to take care of farm animals, to milk
So
cows.
what do we do with the ones that don't? What do we do with those people that don't?
Well, that's why they're being taken care of now, because they can't take care of themselves. I'm being facetious there, but that is part of the reason. But also, we have generation after generation where we've made them that way.
Absolutely.
We've kept them down. It is a type of slavery, and I don't understand why people don't see that. People of all colors don't understand that when you're on welfare, when the government is taking care of you, you are enslaved, and you are kept from profiting. You are kept from that life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness, property, and prosperity. They don't want you to prosper. They don't want you educated, because if you get educated, you're going to figure out what they're doing to you.
Yep.
And they don't want that. So anyway, I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you very much. Joe always has such great insight.
Sure. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, okay. I think a couple of other problems that I think this idea would do a lot to solve is, number one, the concentration of the population in the cities. You know, the cities seems like pretty much all the great economic and political problems come from cities. You know, cities seem to be the absolute center of corruption and decay and rotten, degradation and everything that's wrong with human society. Seems like the big cities are always the greatest centers.
You're absolutely right, and we're out of time. We hear the music in the background. The hour goes faster and faster. When we first started, we weren't sure how we were going to do this, but the hour just goes faster and faster. Thank you, Joe, so much. And you're absolutely right. The cities they breed corruption because they have so many people in them. Thank you so much, and appreciate all of you listeners out there. Remember, we will be back tomorrow morning with Power Talks. Thank you.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800 375 4188.